South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. South Africa goes to the polls on the 29th of May. I will track the election and bring you ground reports. Is it the end of the road for the African National Congress? And will former President Jacob Zuma stage a dramatic comeback? From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Now, Russia launches intense shelling and a ground offensive in Kharkiv, says Ukraine's defense ministry. Kiev's forces begin evacuation of civilians from the region. Beijing's military says it tailed and warned a U.S. Navy ship near the Paracel Islands in the South China Sea, accusing it of intruding into its territorial waters. Chad's junta chief, Mohamed Idris Deby Itno, wins the presidential election, extending his family's decades-long grip on power. Britain's opposition Labour Party vows to scrap the Sunak government's flagship Rwanda scheme if it comes to power, replacing it with a tougher approach to migration. Reports say OpenAI plans to announce its artificial intelligence-powered search product on Monday, raising the stakes in its competition with Google. Hello and welcome. Let's begin with Nigeria. The West African nation is escalating its crackdown on drug abuse and trafficking. In the latest, Nigeria's Senate has approved a bill that proposes the death penalty for persons found guilty of trading or consuming hard drugs and narcotics. The death penalty will now be the new maximum sentence for the offence, which has replaced life imprisonment. The bill also updated the list of dangerous drugs and strengthens the operations of the Drug Law Enforcement Agency. Nigeria is Africa's most populous country, with over 200 million people. In recent years, it has gone from being a transit point for illegal drugs to a full-blown producer, consumer, and distributor. About 46% of young adults in Nigeria reported to have used drugs at least once. Authorities say nearly 14.3 million people in the country abuse drugs. Opioid abuse, especially tramadol and cough syrups containing codeine, has been widespread through Nigeria. The country's Food and Drug Administration banned the production and the import of codeine cough syrup in 2018. Codeine is a painkiller, but also an addictive opioid. If taken in excess, it can cause organ failure or trigger schizophrenia. While cannabis is cultivated locally, cocaine and other narcotics are trafficked alongside opioids to feed a growing addiction problem. Drug trafficking in Nigeria has a complex history that can be traced back several decades. The illicit trade is fueled by several factors, including economic disparities, political instability, and global demand for drugs. Nigeria has also witnessed an increase in the production of methamphetamine within its borders. Criminal networks in the country have been involved in secret manufacturing of the drug, often in makeshift laboratories with precursor chemicals imported from countries like China. Nigerian drug traffickers also have established connections with transnational criminal groups such as the Latin America drug cartels and West African criminal networks. This enables them to access a global market and sophisticated smuggling techniques. The drug trade poses a grave threat to Nigeria's younger generation. 60% of the country's population is below the age of 30, and the repercussions of this dire situation are evident among the youth. There is an increase in number of young individuals who struggle with addiction. Substance abuse has been higher in northern Nigeria, with Kano State being a major hub. Instead of education institutes, they are landing in rehabilitation centers. Now, the drug appetite among the country's youth is only increasing. So Nigeria's drug epidemic is a ticking bomb and needs to be diffused now. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by And staying with West Africa, 2 countries in the region are at loggerheads over a border feud. Now we're talking about Niger and Benin, and stuck in the middle of this dispute is China. Now China's first shipment of crude from Niger has been blocked due to the ongoing crisis between the 2 African nations. Benin is preventing its neighbour, Niger, from using its port to export its first crude oil. Why is Niger using Benin's port to export its crude? Well, and what is China's role here, and why is Benin preventing the oil export? Let me break it down for you. Niger is a landlocked country in West Africa. It shares its southern border with Benin, which opens into the Gulf of Guinea in the Atlantic. A 2,000-kilometer-long Chinese-built crude oil pipeline connects oil fields of Niger to the Atlantic Ocean, passing through Benin's port of Seme. Now, the pipeline is a part of China's investment in Niger's petroleum sector. China had loaned $400 million to Niger, which the West African nation intends to repay by exporting oil. Niger was projected to ship 90,000 barrels per day this month through the pipeline to China. But Benin does not want to allow this anymore, and here's why. Benin is a member of the West African bloc ECOWAS. Last year, ECOWAS had threatened Niger's junta with a military operation and also levied sanctions against the country. So Niger closed its border with Benin. As months passed, Benin took a softer stance on its neighbor and opened its border. It began exporting large quantities of staples to Niger, but junta-led Niger refused to open its border for goods coming in from its neighbor. Now, this impacted Benin's government revenues and also pushed up the cost of its food goods. Now, Benin's president, Patrice Talon, is demanding that the landlocked Niger reopen its border if it wants to use Benin's ports. He says that Niger is treating Benin like an enemy and is not cooperating to restore ties or normalize trade, but is allowing informal border crossings.
We said economic relations and trade relations must be re-established so that goods, particularly oil, can cross Benin, be loaded and so on. But we have received no response. It would seem that the Niger authorities prefer Niger oil to cross Benin informally, to be loaded in our waters informally, because they believe that Benin is perhaps an enemy country, because the Benin authorities are enemies.
Now, Benin's move puts at risk Niger's plan to begin exporting oil. Niger is one of the world's poorest countries, and selling crude on the international market for the first time via Benin's Seme port was seen as a boost for its weak economy. Now, will Niger's junta now soften its stance against ECOWAS member Benin? Or will it look at alternate partners in the region that share the same sentiment against the pro-West bloc? Shifting focus now to South Sudan, the government has launched a fresh round of mediation with rebel opposition groups. These talks that are aimed at ending the conflict that has crippled South Sudan's economy for years. The president of South Sudan said that his government is ready to negotiate in good faith and with an open mind. He said that he hoped the rebels had similar convictions and a similar desire for peace.
Opposition groups have a similar conviction and desire for peace in South Sudan, which when fully achieved will bring everlasting stability and economic development in the region and leave alone South Sudan.
What we need is not another peace agreement. Peace agreements are not being implemented. What we need is a serious dialogue, a real soul search, so that we can really address the root causes and come out with a new social contract that will define what type of a state we want to have, that will define what type of a nation we are and how do we manage our affairs.
The fresh round of talks are being mediated by the Kenyan President William Ruto, who stepped in at the request of South Sudanese President Salva Kiir. During the meet, Ruto has called for an inclusive and homegrown solution to African issues.
I pledge my unwavering commitment and availability to support this process at any stage of the mediation roadmap. Our goal is to secure a credible pathway to durable and sustainable peace for the Republic of South Sudan, our region, and our continent.
Now, Kenya has appointed former Army Commander Lazarus Mbayiwo to lead the talks. He also mediated a peace deal between Sudan and South Sudanese rebels in 2005 that paved the way for South Sudan's independence in 2011. But the country has suffered chronic instability since winning independence. A deadly 5-year civil war from 2013 to 2018 claimed the lives of nearly 400,000 people. The latest round of peace talks follows previously failed negotiations. In 2018, talks were brokered in Rome by a Catholic association with ties to the Vatican. But the coalition of rebel groups did not sign the peace agreement that ended with a 5-year civil war. Several rounds of negotiations between Juba and the rebels since 2019 failed to curb the violence, despite a ceasefire signed in January of 2020. In 2022, the government also withdrew from the negotiations. It accused the rebels of using the talks to buy time to prepare for war. South Sudan is the world's newest nation, but also one of the poorest. Despite oil resources, South Sudan has endured natural disasters and an economic crisis. Now, currently, about 9 million people in the country are in need of humanitarian assistance. But South Sudan's troubles are only compounding, as hundreds of thousands of South Sudanese refugees are now returning from neighboring Sudan, attempting to flee the ongoing brutal war there. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. 40 years ago, HIV was identified as the cause of AIDS, and it has been 36 years since the first HIV vaccine trial, but the world still does not have a working vaccine. Now, scientists in Uganda are partnering with the United States to develop an HIV vaccine. Reports say research into the production of the vaccine has already begun. If successful, this could be a ray of hope for millions across Africa. Our next report gets you the details.
Because when Africa succeeds, the United States succeeds. Quite frankly, the whole world succeeds as well.
The United States of America's relations with countries across Africa go back decades. What began as an attempt to nurture and promote anti-communist ideas among the African elites during the Cold War has today shaped up into a strategy to prevent conflict and promote peace and stability in an extremely fragile region. The resource-rich continent has also long been a locale for the United States and Russia to act out their global fight for dominance. America's partnerships in Africa extend to various fields, including diplomacy, development, security, and defense. In East Africa, the United States and Uganda have partnered to fight a deadly enemy, human immunodeficiency virus, or the HIV. Reports say the US's Walter Reed Army Institute of Research has teamed up with Ugandan scientists to develop an HIV vaccine. The vaccine uses mRNA vaccine technology that came out during the COVID-19 vaccine development. According to reports, research into the production of the new vaccine, called RapidVax, has already begun. Researchers propose that the body can more effectively fight off infection because of RapidVax's frequent immune system stimulation. Scientists are currently studying the safety of the vaccine candidate, which is in phase 1. They're hopeful it will soon enter the second phase. Last year, the first trial in Africa of 2 combination vaccines to prevent HIV, which began in December 2020, was halted after researchers concluded it was not working. The vaccine was tested on over 1,500 people aged between 18 and 40 in Uganda, Tanzania, and South Africa. Previous trials in South Africa to test the only vaccine that had shown any success in protection against HIV, the RV144, which was developed in Thailand, was stopped in February 2020 after interim results found it was not working. About 39 million people worldwide are living with HIV. More than 23 million, or 69%, are in sub-Saharan Africa. It has been 40 years since HIV was identified as the cause of AIDS and 36 years since the first HIV vaccine trial. But the world still doesn't have a working vaccine. So the latest partnership between the US and Uganda comes as a major step forward in efforts to prevent the spread of HIV in Africa and as a ray of hope for millions across the world.
And that's it on the show for this week. We will see you again next week. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. South Africa goes to the polls on the 29th of May. I will track the election and bring you ground reports. Is it the end of the road for the African National Congress? And will former President Jacob Zuma stage a dramatic comeback? From elections to climate change, to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost.